This house on Maplewood Avenue used to be my safe place. I still remember getting the keys from the realtor and walking in as the owner for the first time. Duncan was just 13, and he looked at me like I'd done something amazing. "Is this really our house, Mom?" he asked, touching the wooden stair rail. "Yes, sweetie, it's our house now," I said, feeling so proud. I didn't know that 38 years later, that same son would kick me out like I was trash. My name is Lillian Trent, and I'm 76 years old. I worked most of my life as a merchandiser at a big department store in Birmingham. It wasn't fancy, but it taught me about quality and money, especially money. After Harold, my husband, ran off with his secretary, leaving me with a baby and a mortgage, I promised myself I'd never depend on anyone again. I saved a little each month, then started investing. Small amounts. Then I invested more. I learned about the market, read financial magazines, and went to free classes. By 45, I had paid off my mortgage. By 50, I had saved a good amount. By 60, I could have stopped working, but I kept going to be around people and not sit at home. No one knew about my saving, not my friends, not my coworkers, and especially not Duncan. After what I went through with his father, I decided money was my business. The house on Maplewood Avenue was my fortress. It had 2 floors, 4 bedrooms, and a small garden. Nothing fancy, but big enough to be comfortable. I loved working in the garden, growing roses and dahlias that won prizes at local shows. On weekends, I had tea parties with my neighbors. Duncan grew up, graduated from college, and got a job at an insurance company. Life was calm and good. Then he met Priscilla. Priscilla Norfolk, with her perfect nails and a smile that never reached her eyes. She worked at the same insurance company as Duncan, doing some kind of sales. They dated for 6 months, got engaged, and married 3 months later. Small wedding. Cheap restaurant. Honeymoon in Cornwall. "Mom, Priscilla and I were thinking," Duncan started one Sunday when the newlyweds came to visit. "That was 5 years ago. You're here all alone in this big house, and we're paying so much for rent. We could move in with you," Priscilla said, putting her manicured hand in mine. "You wouldn't have to do everything yourself, and we could save up for our own place." I suspected there was a catch, but I couldn't say no to my son. The house was big, and being around young people keeps you going at least until they save up. I agreed. They moved in 2 weeks later. At first, things were fine. Duncan fixed everything he could get his hands on. Priscilla sometimes cooked dinner when I worked late. We watched TV together in the evenings. It was almost perfect. The change started slowly, so slowly that I didn't see it at first. Priscilla started rearranging the living room, saying it was more modern. Then my photos started disappearing from the shelves and walls, replaced by her porcelain figurines. Then my favorite dahlias in the backyard were pulled up to make room for trendy plants. "Mom, no offense, but those flowers look like Grandma's," Duncan said, not even noticing how much that hurt me. As time went on, I felt more and more like a guest in my own home. Duncan and Priscilla took over the whole second floor, including my old bedroom. I was asked to move into the small room on the first floor that we used as a study. "It's hard for you to climb stairs, Mom," Duncan said, sounding fake. "This way you don't have to." I didn't argue, even though my knees were fine. Then came the unspoken rules. No loud TV. No washing machine after 8 p.m. and no warning if I invited my friends over. My house was no longer mine. One day I came home from work and found Priscilla going through my dresser. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Oh, Lillian," she said, not even blushing. "I was just looking for old photo albums to show my mom what Duncan was like as a kid." I knew she was lying. The photo albums were in the living room closet. I just shut the door tighter as she left. From that day on, I started locking the door. When I left the house, Priscilla noticed and told Duncan. "Mom, don't you trust us?" he asked that evening, sounding hurt. "I just like my privacy," I replied, knitting. I kept my eyes down, afraid he'd see how bitter I felt. "It's weird, Mom. We're family. We shouldn't have secrets." I almost laughed. If only he knew the secret I'd been keeping all these years, hidden in safe deposit boxes and investments. Months went by, and my space in the house shrank. My books were moved from the living room to boxes in the garage to make room for modern books. My favorite china, which I'd collected for years, was put away in a closet. "It's too old-fashioned," Priscilla said. Even my old car was frowned upon. "Mom, it's ruining the look," Duncan said one day. "Why don't you sell it? You hardly ever drive it." "I drive it to shop and to the doctor," I said. "You could call a cab or ask me," he said, like he was doing me a favor. I just shook my head. My car was my last bit of freedom. At dinner, I was just a silent observer. Duncan and Priscilla talked about their work, their weekend plans, their new stuff. It was like I wasn't there. "Lillian, pass the salt," Priscilla said, never calling me Mother or Mrs. Trent. For my 75th birthday, Duncan and Priscilla went to her parents' house for the weekend, leaving a card and a box of chocolates on the table. "Sorry, Mom. Long time promise to visit them. We'll celebrate when we get back." We never celebrated. I remember sitting alone in my little room that night, looking at the card and thinking how far apart we'd grown. Duncan, my little boy who couldn't sleep without my lullaby, was now a stranger. My friend Eleanor, the only one who remembered to wish me a happy birthday in person, said, "Lil, why do you put up with this? This is your house." "He's my son," I said, like that explained everything. "A son who treats you like a piece of furniture," she said. I didn't say anything, but her words stuck with me. The last straw was last spring. I was sitting in the garden when I heard Duncan and Priscilla talking through the open kitchen window. They didn't know I could hear them. "How much longer do you think she'll last?" Priscilla's voice was casual, like she was talking about the weather. "Don't say that," Duncan said, but he didn't sound like he meant it. "I'm just being practical. Your mother isn't getting any younger, and the house is paid off. When she dies, it will go to you. We could sell it and buy something closer to the city." "Prissy, stop it," Duncan sounded annoyed, but not angry. "Or we could suggest she move into a nursing home. She can't live alone forever. It's not safe at her age." I froze. They were talking about my future, my life, like I was a problem too. "Get rid of. Maybe you're right," Duncan said after a pause. "I'll talk to her next week." The week after I overheard the conversation dragged on. I tried to act normal, but I was angry. Duncan walked around me, looking at me like he was figuring out how old and weak I was. Priscilla didn't hide what she was thinking. She started bringing in brochures about nursing homes, leaving them on the coffee table. "You know, Lillian," she said at dinner one night, "my Aunt Martha just moved into Sunset Gardens. She says it's great. 24-hour care, friends, activities." "Really?" I said, trying to sound normal. "How old is she?" 83, Priscilla said, hesitating. 7 years older than me. "And I suppose she has health problems?" "Well, arthritis, some memory problems." "How interesting." "I have neither. My last checkup showed I'm in great shape for my age." Duncan coughed, not looking up. "Mom, no one's saying you need to go to a nursing home right now. We're just thinking about the future. My future or yours." I asked. There was a long silence. Priscilla frowned, and Duncan finally looked at me, annoyed. "We're worried about you," he said, sounding like he'd practiced it. "This house is too big for you alone." "But I'm not alone," I said. "You've lived here for 5 years." "Yes, but," he hesitated, "we can't take care of you forever." It was so ridiculous. I almost laughed. What kind of care were they talking about? The way they'd slowly push me out of my rooms. How they never asked about my day. How they forgot my birthday. "I take excellent care of myself, Duncan," I said. "I always have." "You too, by the way." "Lillian," Priscilla said with a sweet smile. "No one is saying you don't. But you have to face the truth. Your health isn't getting any better." "My health is fine," I said. "And taking care of a house this big takes energy and money," she went on, like I hadn't said anything. "The roof needs fixing. The garden is a mess. The heating bills are rising. And whose fault is that?" I looked at her. Who pulled up my flowers? Who wanted a new heating system when the old one worked fine? Priscilla turned pale. "We just wanted to make the house more modern and comfortable for ourselves," I added quietly. Not for me, Duncan jumped up, slamming his chair. Stop it, Mother. This is awful. We're trying to help, and you're acting like a child. His words hurt more than a slap. My son, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, was yelling at me, defending. A woman who wanted to throw me out of my own home. I'm tired of you picking on Priscilla, he went on. She tries her best to make you feel good, and all you do is complain. I got up and went to my room. That night, I couldn't sleep, thinking about all the years I'd spent raising my son. Where had I gone wrong? When had my caring boy turned into this selfish man, ready to kick his own mother out? In the morning, I found only Priscilla in the kitchen. She pretended to be busy making coffee, but I knew she was waiting for me. Where's Duncan? I asked.
He went to work early, she said, not looking at me. Lillian, we need to talk.
I sat down, bracing myself. I know it's hard to accept moving, Priscilla started, like she was talking to a child, but it's really the best for everyone. For everyone, or for you and Duncan. I asked. She lost it for a second, her eyes flashing. But she pulled herself together. Lillian, let's be honest. You're 76, you can't live alone, and Duncan and I want to start a life of our own without. She hesitated, looking for a word. Responsibilities? Burdens? Is that what you mean? I asked, sipping my tea. I didn't say that, Priscilla said. But her eyes gave her away, but I thought about it. I put my cup down. Priscilla, let's be really honest. You've never liked me, but I own this house. I bought it, I paid the mortgage, I've taken care of it all these years. And now you can't take care of it, she shot back. Your pension barely covers the bills. Duncan told me about your money problems. I almost laughed. Duncan had no idea about my money. He just assumed I was living on a small pension. My money is my business, I said calmly, and I can take care of my home. But you're not, Priscilla shouted. Look at the garden, the leaky roof, the old plumbing. The garden was fine until you changed it, I reminded her. As for the roof and plumbing, yes, they need fixing. But instead of helping, you're telling me to move out because repairs cost money? She raised her voice. Duncan can't take care of both you and the house. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Let me get this straight, Priscilla. This house belongs to me, not Duncan's, not yours, mine. And it's up to me to decide what to do with it. Her face twisted with anger. You selfish old woman. Duncan is your only son, your heir. This house will be his someday anyway. Maybe, I said. But that someday isn't here yet. That was the end of our conversation. Priscilla stormed out, slamming the door. That same evening, Duncan came home early. I could tell by his face that Priscilla had already told him everything. Mom, we need to talk, he said, coming into the living room. Of course, darling. I put down my book and sat back. He sat across from me, holding his hands in his lap. Priscilla sat next to him, putting her hand on his shoulder. Mom, I've been thinking, and I've decided we need to make a change, Duncan started. You can't live alone in a house this big. I'm not alone, I said. You live with me. Yes, but it's temporary. Priscilla and I want our own family, our own space. And you need constant care. Care? I raised my eyebrows. Since when do I need care? I'm fine. Don't play dumb, Mom, Duncan said, annoyed. You forget to turn off the stove, mix up the days. Sometimes you don't remember where you put things. I stared at him. Nothing like this had ever happened to me. Where did he get these ideas? It's not true, Duncan, I said. I've never forgotten to turn off the stove, and I'm fine with
time.
You see, Priscilla said, she doesn't even remember. These are signs of memory problems. I turned to her, angry. Priscilla, I know you want me gone, but making up things is low, even for you. Mom, Duncan jumped up. How can you say that? Priscilla does everything for you. Name one thing she's done for me besides what she wanted, I said. Duncan opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. He looked at Priscilla, who jumped in. I always cook, clean, do your laundry, she listed, sounding righteous. You cook what you and Duncan like, not what I like, I countered. You put my stuff in boxes, and you wash my clothes after I told you not to. Priscilla turned red, and Duncan grabbed his head. "Stop it!" he shouted. "I can't listen to this anymore. Mom, you have to understand. Priscilla and I can't live like this anymore. We need our own home." "I never stopped you," I said. "You said you were moving in to save money. What happened to that plan?" Duncan and Priscilla looked at each other. "House prices went up," Duncan mumbled. "We can't afford anything." "And this house is perfect for us," Priscilla burst out.
It's
"The right area, big enough, paid off." "Exactly," I said. "You don't want your own house, you want my house without me." There was a long silence. Duncan stared at the floor. Priscilla clenched her fists. I waited for them to say something. "Mom," Duncan finally said, "I'm your only child, your heir. This house will be mine someday anyway. Why not now? You could move into a nice nursing home. We could visit. Or you could get a smaller apartment," Priscilla said, seeing my face at the mention of a nursing home. "Something more suitable for a lonely older woman." I looked at them both. I didn't recognize my son. Where was the boy who cried when I was sick, who brought me flowers, who said he'd always take care of me? "I get it," I said quietly. "You want me to leave my own home." "Mom, don't be dramatic," Duncan said. "We're offering a solution. You don't need a house this big, and we need it to start a family." "What family, Duncan?" I said. "A family isn't just a husband and wife. It's also parents, grandparents. Or do you not think of me as part of your family anymore?" He looked away. That said everything. "Okay," I said, feeling calm. "I'll leave. You will?" Priscilla looked surprised. "Yes," I said, "but on one condition: the house stays mine." "What?" they said at the same time. "You want me to leave but keep the house? It's not for sale. It stays mine until I die." "But then what's the point?" Priscilla said. "We can't fix up a house that isn't ours. Why should we?" I shrugged. "Live as you are or move out and rent somewhere else." "Mom, that's not fair," Duncan said. "We've been taking care of you all these years." I laughed. "Taking care of me? What are you talking about? When was the last time you asked how I was? You've pushed me to the edge of my own home, and now you want to kick me out altogether, and you call that caring?" Duncan turned pale, but pulled himself together. "If that's how you see it, we have no choice," he said. "Either you sign the house over and move out," he stopped, "or Or what?" I said. "Throw your own mother out on the street." "Not on the street," Priscilla said. "To a nursing home where you belong." I looked at her, then at my son. "Is that your final word, Duncan?" He held my gaze, but I could see the shame hidden in his eyes. "Yes, Mother. It's the best decision for everyone." "All right," I said. "Give me a week to pack. I'll move out. But where will you go?" Duncan asked, worried for the first time. "That's not your concern anymore," I said, turning to leave. "And yes, I'm keeping the house." "You can live here until I decide to sell it." "Sell it?" Priscilla said. "You can't." "I can," I said. "It's mine, and it will stay mine." The next week was tense. Duncan and Priscilla didn't believe I was really leaving. They were waiting for me to change my mind. But I packed my things, choosing what I wanted to take. I met with my lawyer and updated my will. I talked to a financial advisor about investments. I looked at apartments and chose a nice one in downtown Birmingham. On moving day, I called a cab and took my suitcases to the front door. Duncan and Priscilla watched me, confused. "Mom, are you really leaving?" Duncan asked. "Absolutely," I said, putting on my coat. "I'll leave the keys on the table. But where are you going?" He looked worried, like he was realizing what was
happening. To my new place, I said. A nursing home?
Priscilla gasped. "You got everything done so fast." I gave her a sweet smile. "No, darling. The apartment at River Plaza." "River Plaza?" Duncan looked shocked. "That's the most expensive place in the city. How can you afford it?" "I've always been able to afford more than you thought," I finished for him. "What do you mean?" he said. "I mean, your poor old mother isn't so poor," I said, buttoning my coat. "In 40 years of work, I've not only paid for this house, but I've saved a good amount, which, by the way, I'm not going to share with ungrateful children." Priscilla looked amazed and Duncan turned pale. But how? You just worked at a department store. So, I knew how to save and invest, which is more than I can say for you, I said. The cab honked. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Mom, wait, Duncan said. Let's talk. If you have money, maybe we could make a deal. I looked at him sadly. Even now, he wasn't thinking about me?
He was thinking about himself. It's too late, Duncan.
You've made your choice, and I've made mine. The utility bill comes next month. Don't forget to pay it. I walked out to the street and got into the cab. Where to? The driver asked. River Plaza, I said, looking ahead. And let's stop at the bank. I have an appointment with my financial advisor. The apartment at River Plaza was even better than I expected. A big living room with windows looking over the river, a modern kitchen, a bedroom with a walk-in closet, and a fancy bathroom. Everything I never had in my old house. The first few days I just enjoyed the quiet. No one told me the TV was too loud. No one got mad if I left my cup on the table. This was my place, my rules, my life. Eleanor loved my new place. Lil, this is amazing, she said. I can't believe you could have had this all along, and you were living in that old house with those ... double quotes. She hesitated, looking for a word. You can say it, I said, pouring tea. With those ungrateful people. Exactly, Eleanor said. You know, I always said you should think of yourself. You gave so much to Duncan. Let's not talk about him, I said. Tell me about your grandkids. We had a great evening, talking and making plans. Eleanor said I should take her on a trip to the Mediterranean, something we'd always wanted to do. Why not? I said. Now that I'm free, I can do what I want. We should start with something you've always wanted to do but put off, Eleanor said. What did I really want? There was something I'd always dreamed of, but thought was impossible. You know, I said slowly, I've always wanted a sports car. Eleanor looked surprised, then laughed. Lil, you never stop amazing me. A sports car at 76. Why not? I said. Age is just a number. I can see fine, I have steady hands and a driver's license. And I've always wanted something more exciting than my old car. Well then, Eleanor said, if not now, when? That night I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning I called my financial advisor, Mr. Clayton. Mr. Clayton, I need your advice, I said. I'm thinking of buying a car, a sports car.
He paused. Mrs. Trent, are you sure? Those cars are expensive.
I know, I said, and I can afford it. The question is, which one? Mr. Clayton listed the options. I listened, but I already had an image in my head. What about a Porsche? I asked. He sounded surprised. Well, they're great cars, but they're sporty. Exactly what I want, I said. I want something special to show off my new life. Mr. Clayton was quiet, then said, I can set up a visit to a Porsche dealer. I know a manager who will help you. That would be great. I said. That evening I went through my closet. I wanted to look good for the dealer. One chose a pantsuit, a silk blouse, and comfortable shoes. I added a pearl necklace and diamond earrings. In the morning, I woke up excited. After breakfast, I called Eleanor to tell her my plans. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked. Lil, you're the craziest person I know. I haven't decided yet, I said, laughing. I'm just going to look, but you're already excited. Eleanor said, I can hear it in your voice. You sound younger. She was right. I felt younger, like I'd lost a weight. At 2 p.m., I called a cab and went to the Porsche dealer. The manager, Trevor, greeted me. Mrs. Trent, Mr. Clayton told me you were coming. Let me show you our cars. Trevor was polite, but I saw a doubt in his eyes. He probably didn't see many older women buying sports cars. But he pulled himself together and started his presentation. We have models that might interest you. The Cayenne, the Mac and ... What about the 911? I interrupted. Trevor blinked. Of course, the 911. It's our legendary car. Let me show you. He led me to a silver car. I walked around it, admiring it. It was a work of art. Can I asked, pointing to the door. Sure. Trevor opened it, and I sat in the leather seat. The interior smelled new. I felt like I was in a spaceship. What do you think? Trevor asked. Gorgeous, I said, but I'd like to see other colors. Anything brighter? Trevor was happy. We have a 911 in red. He walked me to another car, and I gasped. The red car shone like a jewel. This is what I've been looking for, I said. Trevor smiled. It's a 911 Carrera. It has 443 horsepower. It goes from 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. I nodded. I wanted to know more. Can I pick the inside color? Of course. Trevor showed me leather samples. We have black, gray, brown, beige, and red, I asked. To match the outside? Trevor hesitated. It's unusual. Usually people pick black or beige with a red car. I want red, I said, if possible. Of course, we can do that. Trevor said, how much would a car like this cost? Trevor said a number that would shock most people. I just nodded. And when? Can I get it? Trevor was confused. The old lady was buying an expensive car. In about 3 months, he said. But we need to place the order and get a deposit. Of course, I said, opening my purse. How much? Trevor was still confused. Usually 25% of the cost, but maybe you want to talk about loans. We have good loan plans. That won't be needed, I said, writing a check. I'll pay the full price. It's easier for everyone. At that moment, the door opened and a couple walked in, talking. I didn't turn around, but I heard a familiar voice. I'm telling you, it's a great buy. A car like this is not only prestigious but also keeps value up. I froze. It was a voice I knew. Duncan, my son, was here. I started to sweat. Mrs. Trent, Trevor said. Is everything okay? Yes, just a second, I said, turning around. What are the odds? I slowly turned around and saw them. Duncan and Priscilla were standing at the entrance talking to another manager. They hadn't noticed me yet. Priscilla was wearing an expensive suit that I knew she had bought at a discount on sale, and was now passing off as a designer suit. Duncan was in his usual business suit that he wore to important meetings. I decided not to hide. After all, they were the ones who'd kick me out of my house. They were the ones who thought I was a worthless old woman who couldn't take care of herself. It was time to show them how wrong they were. Trevor, I said loud enough to get their attention. I'm taking this car, and if I can, I'd like to pick up this showpiece today. I'm willing to pay extra for urgency. My voice echoed through the silent room of the car dealership. Duncan turned his head sharply, and our gazes met. His eyes widened in surprise, and his jaw dropped. Priscilla, noticing his reaction, turned too and froze when she saw me. Mom, Duncan stepped forward uncertainly. What are you doing here? The same thing you are, I guess, I answered calmly. Picking out an automobile. A car, he asked, shifting his gaze from me to the red Porsche and back again. You single quotes re ... you're going to buy it? I'm not going to buy it. I smiled and handed the check to a stunned Trevor. Here's the down payment. I'll wire the rest as soon as you have the paperwork ready. Priscilla came closer, her face contorted with a mixture of distrust and anger. Lillian. Are you crazy? She hissed. It's a Porsche. It's worth a fortune. I know how much it cost, darling, I said in a flat voice, and I can afford it, but how? Duncan looked completely confused. Where did you get that kind of money? I told you I'm not as poor as you think I am. I shrugged. 40 years of work. Reasonable investments ... It's single quote S amazing how much you can save if you don't spend it all on designer clothes and fancy gadgets. The last sentence was a stiletto to Priscilla, who was always bragging about her purchases even though her credit cards, I suspected, were loaded with debt. But you worked as a merchandiser, Duncan exclaimed, still in disbelief. Just a department store merchandiser. Yeah, so what? I raised an eyebrow. Carl Benz started out as a mechanic and built Mercedes. John Rockefeller was an accountant before he became an oil magnate. Profession doesn't determine financial success, Duncan's smart decisions and discipline. Trevor, who had recovered in time, intervened in the conversation. Mrs. Trent, your check is in order. As for this exhibition piece, unfortunately, it's already been reserved for another customer. Oh, that's a shame. I couldn't hide my disappointment. However, Trevor continued, we have another Carrera Ease in stock. It's also red, but with a black interior. If you're happy with that, we can have it ready for you by tomorrow. That would be Great, I said brightly. The black interior is good too, and we'll make a personalized order for the future anyway. Wait, Duncan intervened, clearly trying to gather his thoughts. Mom, you can't just buy a Porsche. It's ridiculous. You're 76 years old. So? I looked at him defiantly, at my age. Colonel Sanders was just starting his fast food empire. Michelangelo was working on the Sistine Chapel frescoes. Age is just a number. But but it's dangerous. He objected, such a powerful automobile. At your age. I have excellent eyesight, steady hands, and a valid driver's license. I cut him off, and unlike some young people, I'm not going to speed or break the rules. Priscilla, finally out of her stupor, tugged on Duncan's sleeve. Honey, let's go. This is crazy. She's obviously out of her mind. No, Priscilla, I'm just being myself for the first time in a long time, I replied calmly, and I do what I want to do. Not what others think is appropriate for a woman my age. Trevor, sensing the tension, coughed delicately. Mrs. Trent, if you don't mind, we could go to my office. For the paperwork. Of course! I nodded and turned to my son and daughter-in-law. It was nice to see you. I won't keep you any longer. Mom, wait. Duncan grabbed my hand. We can't leave like this. We need to talk about the house, about money, the future. I release my hand gently but firmly. I thought we'd already talked about everything, Duncan. You've made it clear that I'm a burden to you. Well, now I'm free of obligation to you, and you're free of obligation to me. Isn't that what you wanted? No, I mean, he stammered, glancing at Priscilla. We just wanted what was best for you. And I want what's best for me. I smiled. A ripe cherry-colored Porsche with a leather interior, isn't that beautiful? I turned to Trevor, who was waiting patiently on the sidelines. I'm ready to sign all the necessary documents, and please have the car ready by tomorrow morning, say 10 o'clock. Of course, Mrs. Trent. Trevor nodded with a new respect in his eyes. Everything will be ready. I followed him, feeling the stunned looks of Duncan and Priscilla on me, their faces frozen in expressions of shock and disbelief, were my best reward for years of humiliation and neglect. The next morning I returned to the car dealership, where my new car was waiting for me. A bright red Porsche with chrome details gleaming in the morning sunlight. Trevor gave me a detailed briefing, explained all the functions and features of the car, and then ceremoniously handed me the keys. Mrs. Trent, congratulations on your purchase. He shook my hand. I'm sure you'll enjoy driving it. I'm sure I will, I said, not hiding my excitement. I carefully got behind the wheel, adjusted the seat and mirrors, fastened my seatbelt. I put the key in the ignition, and the powerful engine gave a low growl. It was a beautiful sound, the sound of freedom and new possibilities. Slowly driving out of the showroom, I took some time to get used to the controls. The car was sensitive, responsive, like a living being. Gradually, I got used to it and headed towards my new apartment, feeling the surprised looks of passers-by. It's not every day you see an older woman driving a bright red Porsche on the streets of Birmingham. When I parked at the River Plaza, the concierge couldn't hide his amazement. Mrs. Trent, is this your car? Yes, George. I smiled, handing him the keys. Would you mind putting it in my parking space? It would be my pleasure, ma'am. He accepted the keys with awe. Gorgeous car. Thank you. I nodded and headed for the elevator, feeling light in my body. Once I was in the apartment, I went to the window and looked down where George was carefully parking my new car. The red Porsche stood out among the other cars like an exotic flower among ordinary plants. It was bright, bold, unusual, exactly what I had finally allowed myself to be. In that moment, I realized it was more than just a car. It was a symbol of my liberation from the shackles of convention, from the weight of other people's expectations, from the role of a modest an inconspicuous old lady that had been imposed on me for so long. It was my own choice, my own decision. My way of saying to the world, I am here, I live, and I'm going to do what I want to do. My phone rang as I was making my morning coffee. I glanced at the screen and saw a familiar number. Duncan. A week ago, I would have rushed to the phone, happy that my son remembered me, but now, after everything that had happened, I felt only mild irritation. I let the coffee steep in the French press before picking up the phone. Good morning, Duncan, I said in a steady voice. Mom, finally, this is the third time I've called. He sounded impatient. I've been busy, I replied, pouring coffee into a cup. How could you be busy at 8 o'clock in the morning? he snorted. But then he realized it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. How are you? Fine. I walked out onto the balcony with my cup and settled into a wicker chair overlooking the river. To what do I owe the call? There was a pause and I could literally hear him picking his words. Mom, I wanted to apologize for everything. Priscilla and I talked about a lot of things and we realized we were wrong. You shouldn't live alone. We're worried about you. I sipped my coffee, savoring its bitter flavor and the view of the morning mist over the water. River Plaza has 24-hour security and concierge service. I said it's safer than our old neighborhood. But you're all alone in there, he sounded annoyed. No family, no. No responsibilities, no judgment, no uninvited interference. I interrupted calmly. There was another silence. The kind that comes when someone realizes their old tricks won't work anymore. Mom, maybe we could start over? You could come by for dinner sometime. We could talk, Duncan, I said gently but firmly. I didn't buy that car to come back to the same road. You had your chance to treat me like family. Instead, you treated me like furniture until you realized the antique was worth something. He didn't say anything. I'm not bitter, Duncan. I just finally realized that I don't have to beg for love or space in anyone's life. I gave you my best years, now I'm giving myself the rest. I didn't mean to hurt you,
he muttered, the regret finally cracking through. I know.
But you did, I replied, and now I'm healing on my own terms. I hung up before he could say more. Then I took another sip of my coffee, leaned back in the chair and watched the sun rise over the river, golden and free. Because for the first time in my life, so was I